Hey random stranger, I have not forgotten that hibike or anime in general is a thing that exists. I hope you've been doing well. I am back from a somewhat longer hiatus and I am keen to get back into things. I did rewatch the last few episodes of Hibike, and because of how incredibly meticulous KyoAni is about animating characters down to their last micro expressions, I did pick up on a lot more details. So, heads up, I will be resuming my rants about the plot and what certain characters are thinking and feeling, and how all of that relates back to, I guess, larger literary themes. So, yes, you have been warned. So, episode 11 opened with Yuuko heaping praise on Kaori, saying all of these over the top things about how good of a trumpet player she is. And clearly, she admires Kaori's skills, but you know how when you really like someone or are borderline in love with them, everything they do just seems to acquire this additional shine to it. Either that or you know that you may be exaggerating just how good they are, but you do it anyway because you want them to feel good about themselves and to be encouraged. And I think that is what's happening here. Yuko's praise of Kaori isn't so much springing from, her keen ear for music, but it is inflated by her very deep, overflowing respect and love for Kaori as a person and everything that she's done for the band. So jump to when Yuko overhears Reina practice. She knew immediately that Reina was the better player. It's why later she resorts to begging Reina to, I guess, give up the solo part of her own volition. So for Yuko, and I think we've covered this in previous episodes, but it was never about objective musical ability for her. Rather, she values much more the sacrifices that Kaori has made for the band, and all of the hard work that she's poured into her music all of these years, just patiently waiting for her chance to get a solo part, and generally just her genuine care for other band members. Kaori is extremely popular for very, very good reasons. Not in the least because of her tireless efforts the year before, sort of playing the role of a pleading peacemaker between the stubborn third years and also the ambitious first years. Remember when Reina said outright that she is a better player than Kaori, and Yuko's response was to just yell at her, "How dare you? Don't you know how kind Kaori senpai has been to you?" So there's no logical connection between those two things, being the better player and also how nice Kaori has been. But I guess Yuko is just taken by this very human impulse to believe that someone who's done everything right and has been so self-sacrificial and kind and is yet suffering unfairly should get what they want in the end, because that's justice, right? And that impulse can be so strong that it causes a short circuit in people's brains such that they prioritize other irrelevant factors over actual merit and ability. And so I thought how they portrayed Yuko's loyalty is just so true to real life, with how emotionally invested people get in someone else's success, particularly if they really respect that person and they've seen all of the struggles that they've been through. So going back to this opening of episode 11 with the scene between Kaori and Yuko, you can tell by Kaori's face and sort of the awkward silence that followed that she is aware of this tendency for Yuko to put her on a pedestal almost, or to at least to see everything through the lens of how unfortunate her circumstances are. And though Kaori certainly feels hard done by and is struggling internally with Reina's appearance and what that means for her band prospects, ultimately she would much rather achieve her dream of playing the solo part, not by leaning on her popularity, but by being considered the best in terms of actual musical talent. And so that is what sets up the rest of episode 11 so beautifully. I like how the rapidly developing relationship between Kumiko and Reina is just becoming so darn obvious that even Hazuki is trying to set up more opportunities for them to interact with each other. And I think Hazuki is just smashing the role of wingman, whether she's playing for Team Shuichi or Team Reina. Sometimes it's kind of hard to tell which team she's on. Also, it seems like such a tiny thing, but I also found Kumiko thanking Hazuki and Midori for even thinking to invite Reina over to have lunch with them really interesting. It was almost as if she was unsure if it was the appropriate thing to do. And I feel that stems from Kumiko's tendency to be very cautious, sometimes overly cautious about upsetting people or doing things that she thinks might cause them discomfort. Even though, like in this case, Midori and Hazuki clearly didn't mind or would even welcome a chance to get to know Reina better, she is clearly an important person in Kumiko's life and has been the cause of some pretty significant changes in her. And because they care about Kumiko, they want to get to know that part of her too. However, they also knew that Kumiko would never take the initiative to include Reina in their little circle, so they had to take that first step to give Kumiko permission almost to do that. And it was a great subtle way to show what good friends they are to Kumiko and just how well they know her. There was another part later, just before the re-audition, where both Hazuki and Midori catch Kumiko watching Reina go off to prepare, and they both give her this little like a sort of a knowing nod and a smile, as if to say, "It's okay, we'll continue setting up for you. You go and do whatever it is that you have to do with Reina." And then Kumiko, having again received permission from her friends, runs off after Reina. And I just thought that was so cute. It's comforting to know that Midori and Hazuki, on some level, and for all intents and purposes, are Kumirei shippers as well. But also, on a more serious note, I do appreciate these realistic ways in which they show a very important aspect of Kumiko's character, and that is that part of her is still so wary and scared, timid almost, of acting in a way that she wants to. Like, she's just always constantly worried about how her actions will impact other people. Because we're on the topic of Kumiko Reina, I am gonna analyze every tiny single little detail because I love their relationship so much. I did not overlook that Kumiko knew exactly where to find Reina at that time of day. Of course, she'd be drilling that solo part on the rooftop. Even though I think Reina knows that she's the better player, she's also not one to slack off and risk even the slightest chance of defeat. Which then brings us to this incredibly raw interaction between Yuuko and Kumiko. Yuuko, who was loitering outside listening to Reina practice, and who, I think in the despair of the moment of realizing that Reina does sound qualitatively so much better than Kaori, was just in a very difficult state of denial and needed someone else to give her a shot of reality. And who better to give that to her than the one person everyone knows is actually on Reina's side. And what was great about how Kumiko responded to Yuko's sudden question is that she not only ends up ranting about how great Reina sounds, but she goes a step further to unequivocally state that she is the best person to play the solo part. And what we've seen of Kumiko's character is that she holds herself back a lot for different reasons. And we touched on this before. You know, she tends to not want to offend people and is quite passive. And at the heart of it, I think it's just a way to protect herself from getting hurt. For example, you know, if you don't let yourself hope for gold, it won't hurt as much when you don't get it. If you don't try so hard and do your best, you won't get people mistaking your ambition for selfishness. Or it won't hurt as much if you fail. But when it comes to Reina, amazingly, Kumiko's at this point where she acts in the complete opposite manner to what we've seen of her before. She's not passive and she doesn't hold back if it's to support Reina. I kind of love how both Kaori and Reina have these almost second in commands who would die defending them. Kumiko in particular, in defending Reina, it's like she forgets to turn on her filter, but then immediately realizes what she's blurted out and reverts back to, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. But the thing that she said is already out there. It's fascinating seeing how her devotion to Reina has grown enough to break through her habit of not saying things that might upset people, even though that they're true. Which, if you consider just her natural state, goes to show how deeply she cares for Reina, because in general, you just don't change your core tendencies or your behaviors just for anyone. It has to be for someone that you really, really deeply care for. We got another touching Kumiko Reina moment when Kumiko asked whether Reina's had lunch yet, and Reina replies that yes, she already ate with Kaori and the others. And just how happily Kumiko responded to that, just the relief that showed on her face. She's glad that Reina, despite everything that's happened up until this point, the rumors, the public confrontations, and the having to redo auditions for that solo part, that despite all of that, Reina has still been able to become friends with Kaori and the other trumpet players. And a big part of why that was able to happen, we learned from Reina, is because of Kaori. She is just the kind of person or a leader to want to include everyone and to make sure that they feel accepted in the group. Even someone like Reina, or maybe especially someone like Reina, who may not naturally have the gift of socializing easily and of making friends. So yeah, just all hail to the maturity on display here. Kaori also, she isn't faking the kindness, even though she has reasons to dislike Reina and could make her life a living hell for her if she wanted to, given her popularity in the band. But the fact that both Kaori and Reina can put aside the competition that they find themselves in to treat each other civilly and as good bandmates, I think is a huge triumph for humanity. So reasonable and kind is Kaori that Reina recognizes how much more difficult it will be when she inevitably has to take that solo part from her, fair and square. I think, did the thought of giving up the part to Kaori cross Reina's mind? I think probably, especially when her friendship with Kaori is developing so well. I think that was a key understated moment in Reina's character development. Previously, Reina was like a freaking human island, not connected to anyone relationally and thus without any obligations to consider other people's feelings, especially when it comes to proving that she is the best trumpet player. Now, because she's gotten to know Kaori a little bit better and has seen how genuine she is, that introduces complications to her very steely ambition to be the up-and-coming first year who takes the solo part for themselves. Not that Reina has been going out of her way to be an asshole this whole time. She's just never felt the need to change or hide both who she is and her talent from others. Additionally, Reina has been making consistent efforts to be, if not openly friendly, at least decently pleasant. So in this episode, we saw her walking past Yuuko and just thanking her. There was another time in a previous episode where there was almost like that same shot, Reina walking past Yuuko and telling her that she did a good job in practice, which in turn leads to a dilemma for Yuuko, because Reina's not being enough of an asshole to make it easy for Yuuko to treat her like a sworn enemy, despite her role in jeopardizing or taking away Kaori's solo part in her final year. Okay, here's a good comment from Varen. I feel like it's obvious that everything Yuuko does is knowing what's going on and who's going to win, but she denies it or prefers to lose all respect from others so Kaori can win, which is sweet, but I think everyone has that internal scream hoping she won't say what we think to Reina. I definitely had that internal scream going on just watching this part, anticipating what Yuuko is going to ask Reina to do. Her willingness to be blamed and have that story spread about her bullying Reina into giving up the solo part, was just this very last desperate attempt to secure Kaori's long held dream at any cost, and it was never going to work. For one, Reina is really the voice of reason here. For one, she would never have agreed to Yuko's proposition, and the truth would have come out eventually anyway. Also, if Kaori had found out about Reina throwing the audition because of something Yuuko had asked her to do, that victory would have immediately turned sour in her mouth and just stained her record as a decent bandmate and a person. So Reina just sticking to this idea that all Kaori has to do is be the better player at the reaudition, that is way more in line with how Kaori herself would want to win the solo part, no matter how small the odds were of her beating Reina. Even if you consider the unfortunate circumstances that led to Kaori's predicament, the fact that last year the system in place by which solos were chosen was still, according to seniority, not necessarily talent, that still shouldn't count for anything, really. There just so happened to be a better system introduced this year that prioritizes actual merit, and there's gonna be people who take the fall for that, Kaori one of them. So even if it's true that Reina still has next year to play the solo part, that likewise doesn't place any obligation on her to pretend to be a lesser player than what she really is, just for Kaori's sake. I feel like I'm relitigating the case for why Reina is right, because also I just think the unfairness of Yuuko putting Reina in this position can't be overlooked. Reina was totally right to refuse Yuuko, but the mere fact that she even had to choose to refuse her left her feeling pretty shitty. Also because Reina does understand the gravity of the situation, and she does like Kaori, but it's not going to change her mind, and it shouldn't, and Yuuko should have known that. Instead, it was just such an awful situation for both of them to be in, but Reina in particular, because it's not her fault that all of this happened. It's significant that Kumiko overheard this conversation between Yuuko and Reina. We can imagine that had Kumiko in middle school been asked to throw her audition for the sake of her senpai, she probably would have said yes. Instead, it's obvious that back then she had no idea that her senpai would react in the terrible way that she did, and so she did her best and ended up taking away that senior spot and then just feeling guilty about it for years. However, on a more positive note now, for Kumiko to see how strongly Reina insists that there should be no criteria other than who is the objectively better player, I feel that would have helped absolve her guilt from the past in some way. Of course, after Natsuki was just the best human ever and reassured Kumiko that she did deserve to be in the competition, now for Kumiko to also see Reina stand firm in the face of all of this pressure to give up her solo part to Kaori, I think would have almost been cathartic for her, in the sense that Reina is showing her an alternative, just a different, more self-affirming way of dealing with the exact same dilemma that she found herself in years ago. Another fascinating relationship that's playing out is between Asuka and Kaori. You can tell they're so comfortable with each other and accepting of each other, even if Asuka can sometimes be frustrating, even for Kaori. Like her whole thing of being incredibly non-committal in her opinions and the way that she deflects some really serious questions with her quirky sort of Jedi humor. I liked that we got a moment where Kaori isn't willing to let Asuka off the hook so easily. So for the second time, the first being Kumiko, Asuka is asked for her personal opinion on who should get the solo part, except this time it comes from someone who is much closer to her and who again, for all intents and purposes, has like a giant crush on her, at least as far as I can tell. Or at the very least, admires Asuka greatly and wants to impress her. Even then, Asuka's an impenetrable wall. She just repeats what Taki-sensei is looking for, and when Kaori pushes the question again, Asuka still doesn't budge. I want to dwell on their dynamic a bit more because it feels like Asuka is one of those more divisive characters in the show. One simplistic reading of her character is that she just doesn't give a shit about anything other than herself and her music, which I grant is a possible reading, but is not one that I agree with. I feel that this interaction with Kaori showed that though she doesn't care about the same things that most other people do, she does care for certain people, like Kaori, in her own way. So her brand is being evasive with questions, yes, but also her brutal neutrality and refusal to take anyone's side based on things like friendship or being considerate or nice is actually really refreshing and a much needed guidepost for someone like Kaori. Kaori, by virtue of her personality and her position in the band, has many friends, but I imagine few whose opinions she values more than Asuka's, simply because she knows Asuka won't tell her she deserves the solo part if she really doesn't. In other words, Asuka won't tell her what she thinks she wants to know. Unlike Yuuko or the other band members who either respect or like Kaori too much to tell her otherwise, Asuka is more of an equal peer to Kaori than anyone else. Even Haruka, I suspect, who Kaori clearly is also close to, Haruka would also lend her unconditional support to Kaori because of their existing relationship or friendship. And I think that is valuable too, but there is something additionally special about having a friend who won't sugarcoat anything for the sake of protecting your feelings or for the sake of showing loyalty. One final thing about this interaction is that Asuka does shed light on what her opinion is without actually saying it directly. And that's more than what she usually gives away. By asking Kaori if she really wants to know her actual opinion, Kaori gets an answer, which is why she's like, no, actually, I don't want to hear what you really think. So in a way, there's a kindness in how Asuka kept evading Kaori's question, at least in this specific scene. Kaori is probably not ready to hear out loud Asuka's honest opinion, but the way that Asuka avoids answering her tells her the answer. So even when Kaori's like, not that Reina's better, Asuka still plays along with her. I felt as a way to shield Kaori from the truth. So both of them know that Reina is better, but for the sake of preserving Kaori's sort of sanity and also not crushing unnecessarily even the tiniest sliver of hope that she might have of beating Reina, both Kaori and Asuka sort of wordlessly agree to dance around the truth while at the same time being aware that they both know what the truth is. Hopefully what I just said made some sort of sense. Between Kaori and Asuka, it feels like there is an understanding and an acceptance of the terms and conditions of their very unique and very complex friendship that they maintain. So Kaori will push for Asuka's opinions, but she won't get upset if Asuka doesn't provide any direct answers, nor will she keep pushing Asuka beyond a certain point. Asuka, for her part, won't change how she is, but she will hang around and give just enough clues for Kaori to figure things out on her own or to, read answers into Asuka's silences. So it's sort of like a double-edged sword. You'll never get a straight answer out of Asuka, but that means you're also protected from actually hearing the harsh truth. Let's talk about Natsuki and Yuuko. They are my top nomination for the Dark Horse for category of Best Girlfriends. I have already ranted about how much I love Natsuki in previous episodes, but I feel that she deserves more love because of these truth bombs that she's just so good at dropping, and the fact that she only really drops them out of love for her friends. So the truth bomb that she lays on Yuuko in this episode is that Kaori's only going to suffer because of this reaudition that Yuuko herself has pushed for. Why? Because everyone knows that Reina is the better player, and if they're going to be deciding based on ability, Reina wins the solo hands down and Kaori will have to endure a second loss. On the flip side, if the class votes for Kaori to get the solo part, everyone will know that she only won because people like her better or feel sorry for her, and that would suck equally as well, if not more, because Kaori, knowing that she only got her part because of pity from the rest of the band, would have also absolutely hated that outcome. The way that Natsuki didn't let Yuuko deflect by snarkily reminding her that she didn't even make auditions was great. You know, I feel like Natsuki has this gift of seeing past what people are actually saying with their mouths through to what they're really feeling. She didn't even flinch at that kind of very underhanded jab. She just kept shoving the truth in Yuko's face until she couldn't deny it anymore. Later in a scene, again just right before the re-audition when Yuuko wishes Kaori good luck, I love that it's Natsuki that she immediately runs to afterwards. As to why Yuuko was so upset, I think it was because the thing that she's dreaded happening for a while now is actually happening. She's known how it was going to turn out for Kaori for a while. Either she's going to lose the solo part to Reina because Reina's better, or Kaori's going to win but in an unsatisfactory way because the only way for her to do that was to lean on her popularity, and Yuuko sort of played a role in that. So yeah, Yuuko has to be feeling all manner of awful feelings, like sadness that this is how Kaori's last year is going to be, guilt at not really being able to prevent this outcome, even after having played a key role in forcing Taki sensei to call this second audition and having gone so far as to beg Reina to choose to throw it. But luckily, Natsuki gets it. And what makes her a great friend is that she didn't judge or tell Yuuko how silly she was for thinking that this could end any other way, or for blaming her for causing this sort of situation to eventuate. Instead, Natsuki just lets Yuuko cry her heart out. And the fact that Yuuko went for like the cry at the back sort of hug so that Natsuki couldn't see her face as she was just totally breaking down was kind of heartbreaking. And then once she was done, she just kind of ran off. And I think that just showed that all she really needed was for someone to cling on to and not try to reason with her or to tell her what she did right or wrong. And I find that to be one of the most relatable things about Yuuko. You know, she does her best, she fails, and then what she really needs is for a friend to just be there for her while she processes and she lets all of that emotion out. Before we get to the re-audition, let's just cover all of the little juicy character moments that happened prior to that big moment. First off, there was the moment between Haruka and Kaori. Interestingly, the person who should have talked to Kaori was Asuka, and in fact, Haruka had purposefully went to nudge Asuka to go and give Kaori a pep talk, but Asuka just doesn't end up doing it because it's not a priority for her, or she doesn't see the need for it, but that's just Asuka for you. Curiously, the only person Asuka really seems interested in terms of actively wanting to talk to them or perhaps even help out is Kumiko, which I'm sure will be explored later on. But yeah, I just overall being in a relationship with someone like Asuka would be frustrating, at least for me, because unless you like give them a kick, they won't reach out to care for or anticipate your needs. And if they do anticipate your needs, they don't feel the urge to meet them unless they're prompted to. And even then, they'll probably make excuses to not do it, or even not bother making excuses at all. So I totally get why people have less than warm feelings towards Asuka. At the same time, she's fascinating and kind of mysterious. I don't know what that was. I know what that was now. Anyway, I can't help but feel like there are hidden depths to Asuka that would explain more fully why she's like that. maybe those hidden depths won't necessarily make us increase our empathy for her, but at the very least they'll help us understand better why it is that she takes such little interest in the lives and in the feelings of those around her, even those who supposedly are her good friends. When Haruka herself goes to find Kaori, there's this joking exchange between them where Kaori suggests that Haruka shouldn't have come to see her because isn't she the president? Implying that she should at least try to maintain some semblance of a neutral stance on the re-audition and not show favoritism. To which Haruka responds, "Oh, I'm just a figurehead." I think in reference both to the fact that it's Asuka who is the one still ordering people around now, and also a nod to the fact that Kaori is a good friend, and regardless of Haruka's position as president, she wants to support Kaori and be there for her, which was sweet. I like that Haruka is confident enough now to joke about her position. So yes, Asuka's still the one who naturally takes charge and when she feels like it at least, or she sees the need to, and people instinctively listen to her. But Haruka has proven too that she can put her foot down if necessary, and more than that, she is the one who possesses the empathy and the emotional strength needed to manage the more human needs of the band. And I think you see that a lot in team situations. Often there are different types of leaders, some of whom are much better suited to lead as the head of the group, and some who are more the heart. More rare are the leaders who capture both minds and hearts. In other words, not only do they bring extreme competence and practicality to the table, but also they're leaders who offer care and compassion to those that they're leading. And given Haruka's character development in season 1, she's definitely become more of a well-rounded leader who can address both the needs of the head and of the heart. What Haruka offers Kaori specifically is total support as a peer who's been through 3 years of drama with her, up to and including the split of the band. And I found it interesting that Haruka made a point to inform Kaori that Asuka wasn't coming to see her before the audition, even though Kaori kind of already knew. And the question that Haruka asks her next, "Why are you so obsessed with Asuka?" I'm going to straight up take as her asking, "Why are you so in love with Asuka?" But also, I do think there is something deeper that Haruka is alluding to. She's really asking, why out of everyone is Asuka the one that you crave affirmation from? Why does her opinion matter to you more than anyone else's? To which Kaori doesn't really have an answer, or she doesn't want to answer, other than to say that Asuka is the one who sees through her. And my interpretation of what that meant is that Asuka is the only one who firstly understands and can anticipate the way that Kaori will respond to people and to situations, but also secondly that, as we said before, she won't sugarcoat anything for the sake of making Kaori feel better. She may evade or stay silent, but she will never extend any empty or false words of hope or praise that aren't warranted. So again, just want to reiterate that I do like Asuka. Asuka she may not care or express her care in an obvious way, such that it can be a little frustrating if you're wanting that attention from her. But what Kaori values much more than Asuka's words of affirmation is her honesty. And why does she value that so much? Because if ever Asuka tells Kaori that she's good or a better player, she can trust in that statement as truth, 100%. It's sort of like it's the same as winning real gold as opposed to fake or complimentary gold at a music competition. When Kaori said that she wanted to surprise Asuka, I read that as an expression of a desire to want to constantly keep Asuka interested in and intrigued by her. So, say you're in a close relationship with someone who already knows you pretty much inside out and who you really admire and want to keep around. I think it's just natural to want to prove to them that you are worthy of their continued attention and that there are hidden depths to you still to be discovered. Not that you should ever have to prove yourself to anyone. In any relationship, the other person should just accept you for who you are with no conditions. But there is still this natural wish to train their attention on you for longer, to show them that it is worth their time to stick around. That applies doubly to someone like Asuka, who, as Kaori knows all too well, is incredibly difficult to impress and to keep interested, and who isn't the most forthcoming person in the world, especially when it comes to expressing affection. Well, not even just affection, expressing any kind of admiration, really. So for better or worse, Kaori really likes Asuka, and I think that's just her curse to bear, this ongoing mission to get Asuka to notice and acknowledge how good she is for one, but also to just want to be with her and to spend time with her and to talk to her. So overall, I love that the Asuka Kaori relationship can be boiled down to basically like the it's complicated status. The fact that Kaori is still figuring out why Asuka means so much to her is really cute. It has, I think, all the makings of at least the beginnings of a really beautiful love story, whether that relationship ends up being they just become even closer friends or it turns romantic later on. We finally get to talk about that crazily intimate pre-audition interaction between Kumiko and Reina. Oh my goodness, I feel like these two couldn't be any more codependent right now. First of all, though, we need to get to the core of the meaning behind the question that Reina posed to Kumiko, which is, would you be upset if I lost? And instinctively, when I watched that, I thought, of course, Kumiko should answer no. No, she would not be upset because she'll still love Reina no matter what happens in the audition. But that is not the nature of the mutual understanding that exists between Kumiko and Reina. Both know that Reina will win that solo part unless one of two things happens. One, unless the universe just suddenly decides to spontaneously combust, or two, Reina intentionally throws the audition. And because spontaneous combustion of the universe is probably highly unlikely, what Reina really is asking Kumiko is, would you be upset if I lost to Kaori on purpose? So when Kumiko answers with, I would be upset, she's not saying, Reina, you're nothing to me if you lose this. Instead, she's saying, don't change who you are. Who you are is someone who wants to be special, who is special. You don't owe anyone anything. Not Kaori, not Yuuko, no one in the rest of the band. You just go and be the ridiculously talented person that you are and just freaking show everyone that you absolutely deserve this solo part. I think in reinforcing Reina's right to be special, Kumiko vindicates her own right to be special. In making sure that Reina doesn't waver on her conviction that all that should matter is musical ability, Kumiko is probably, in her mind, looking back on her own terrible experience of being punished for showcasing her own talent and is recognizing that that shouldn't have happened to her, that it was wrong of her senpai and other people to blame her for what happened, that it's okay to be exceptional and to show it. Even if other people will interpret your exceptionality as a threat, or as you being insensitive to their feelings. I want to pause here to dwell on the fact that no matter how steely-willed and strong someone is, like Reina generally has been quite impervious to other people's opinions of her, they still need at least that one person who will back them up no matter what, especially in moments of doubt and when the tidal wave of public opinion is just smashing against them. And for Kumiko to be that one person for Reina, I think is amazing. Her even taking a strong stand on something is nothing short of a miracle. And I read it as a sign that she's healing from her past hurt. The past hurt of you know, what she went through with her senpai and taking her competition spot and all of that. Because of all that trauma, Kumiko had withdrawn into herself and held back from caring about the process of becoming even better at her music and showcasing all of the talent that she has within her. So that fear of competing with other people and drawing fire from them because of jealousy or other emotional reasons had really paralyzed her for years. Unfortunately, humans exist who can't deal with being objectively inferior at a particular skill, or like in Yuuko's case, accepting that someone that they greatly admire is worse at something than someone they don't like. So yeah, jealous and emotional people do complicate things in any field, like not just music, that requires ranking people based on actual skills and ability. Because of this, Kumiko would rather not try as hard in order to preserve, I guess, harmonious relationships with the people around her, even though that might mean she has to choke her talent. At least that's what she used to do. You know, she'll also, as we've seen, say things that aren't true to make someone feel better. Case in point, Natsuki, even though it usually ends up backfiring on her because it's so obvious when she does that. She also tends to want to, I guess, lower the expectations that others have of her. For example, in the band audition, she immediately regretted telling Taki that she'd been playing the youth for over 7 years, because that, at least in her mind, means that he'll expect her to play at a higher level. On top of past trauma, Kumiko is just naturally a passive person. Think back to the whole Shuichi Hazuki fiasco. Hazuki assumed that Kumiko would back off Shuichi if she made a move first, because she knew that Kumiko isn't one to fight for something that she wants, whether that's a relationship or a competition spot. And she was right. Like, especially if someone else is fighting her for it. In a previous life, Kumiko might have had the same opinion as Midori, that it would be better for Reina to give up the solo part for the sake of sort of de-escalating the tension in the band. But now Kumiko is convicted enough to make a stand in front of the entire band and is unafraid of pointing out who the objectively better player is. And I think part of that newly found conviction stems from how she's watched Reina stand her ground and fight for things and not apologize for doing her best and consequently outshining everyone else. So Reina's manner of being gives Kumiko permission to free herself from the restrictions that she's placed on herself a few years ago because of what happened. Kumiko is also defending a close friend. This conflict between Reina and Kaori is also, it's 1 degree removed from Kumiko herself personally. And I think that also contributes to why she's able to stand up for Reina in such a blatant display of support. I think had it been herself who was at the center of this awkward situation, that it may not have been as easy for her to extricate herself from her natural tendency to shrink away from conflict. So in conclusion, Kumiko has come really far, but also change doesn't happen overnight. You know, a tiny detail that I really loved was when Reina double checks and says, really? After Kumiko sort of hand on heart says that she'll tell everyone that Reina deserves the solo. And after she says that, immediately you can see Kumiko freeze up for a few seconds before realizing what she said and then kind of walking back her 100% conviction and retreating to a more hesitant probably. I want to end this Kumiko Reina rant by stating unequivocally again that I just think these two should buy a private island together and live out the rest of their lives as equal partners without having to worry about anyone else. The fact that Kumiko is confident enough now to initiate telling Reina that she is free to kill her if she ever backtracks on her promise to stay with her and to support her always shows that though Kumiko is uncertain about many things, her feelings for Shuichi among them, she is absolutely certain of her commitment to stay with Reina no matter what. I also want to indulge my literary nerd self for just a couple of minutes because I found the choice of dialogue here to be just so fascinating. Specifically, how this exchange between Kumiko and Reina intimately relate the ideas of love and death. So there is a clear agreement between the two, especially after Kumiko brings her own hand up to Reina's, that should they ever fail to stay together, or should their confessions of love, which now they have both expressed explicitly, ever prove to be false or fall apart, death awaits them. Or more specifically, accurately, Reina will make sure that Kumiko meets her death. In literature and in life too, I guess, passionate love has always been twinned together with death. And in nerdy Freudian terms, it's just that never ending tension and balance between the two extreme and opposite drivers of Eros and Thanatos. So Eros corresponds to love and the will to live itself. It's a creative force that strives to achieve greater unity of things. Thanatos, on the other hand, corresponds to death. It is a destructive force that drives people to wish for death and signifies aggression or a breaking down of things. And kind of like how darkness is the absence of light. So Eros, or the will to live, really is just the avoidance of Thanatos, or death. And in the same way, if we're going to stick with that metaphor, you don't really know what light is until you've seen darkness, and vice versa. Ironically, death, or rather the heightened awareness of death, also serves to sting or to awaken us to the very vitality and fragility of life, and by extension of love. So TLDR, one cannot fully love without accepting or even hoping that it might very well kill you. Because this makes sense. Because a love that isn't tinged with that ever-present specter of death, or in other words, the intense fear of it ending or breaking down, is not a love that's worth having. And the most blindingly obvious literary example of that is Romeo and Juliet, the most mainstream Shakespearean play ever. In fact, Shakespearean tragedy just feeds off of this interplay between Eros and Thanatos, or love and death, and often even conflates the two. For example, in Act 1, Scene 1 of Romeo and Juliet, when Romeo is grieving over a girl that he's fallen in love with, who went off to become a nun, he says, "She hath forsworn to love, and in that vow do I live dead that live to tell it now." So what he's saying is that so great was his love for her that he is now effectively dead because he's being forced to live without her. And Juliet is also equally dramatic. After she shares a first kiss with Romeo, even though she has no idea who she is or who he is, Juliet says to her carer, the nurse, "Go ask his name. If he be married, my grave is like to be my wedding bed." Meaning that if she can't have him, she'd rather, or she is going to die. And throughout the play, the extent to which Romeo and Juliet are passionately in love with each other is heightened by showing that their lives are in constant danger because of that love. And in the end, they do end up dying for love. Romeo and Juliet are just two passionate teenagers with raging hormones, so I can't think of a better parallel for Kumiko and Reina. Would Reina actually run a knife through Kumiko if she ever fails to back her up or stay with her? Probably not, but it's the emotion behind the talk around killing or causing death that's incredibly potent. Love and death, in my opinion, are two sides of the same coin for people who are so entangled in each other's lives that they cannot imagine not having the other person stay with them forever through all of life's difficulties. So for Kumiko to so readily accept that Reina will kill her if she ever stops loving and supporting her signifies just how deeply she's come to care for Reina. Likewise, for Reina to threaten death to Kumiko shows how dependent on Kumiko she's become. If this was a Shakespearean tragedy, a darker reading of this dialogue would posit that this threat of death now hanging over the two of them is a kind of omen signifying that eventually their relationship will end in hopeless despair. But fingers crossed that Kyoani didn't take like the whole juxtaposition of Eros and Thanatos too seriously. Note also that Kumiko's acceptance of death by Reina corresponds not only with her willingness to support and care for her, but also coincides with another manifestation of Eros, which is the passion that Kumiko has for music. It's not a coincidence that Kumiko's passion for music has reawakened just as she's also discovered her capacity to unequivocally make a confession of love to Reina. One last, I guess, note about this incredible scene is how happy Reina is after hearing how much Kumiko loves her to the point of accepting death. And we just get another rare, close-eyed smile from Reina. In my opinion, this whole conversation was way more romantic than any physical kiss could ever have been. There were some heavy, like, death do us part commitments being made just before a life-defining moment, complete with that dramatic sweeping hair moment that was also paired with an equally sweeping and emotional soundtrack. Okay, we have arrived at the actual re-audition. Last time we went through in detail the musical technicalities that make it super obvious that Reina was the better player. This time we'll just talk more about the political, or rather the emotional calculations going on in the band and with individual members when it came to the final vote. First of all, it was interesting to see that everyone's eyes were closed when they were listening to Kaori's audition, but as soon as Reina started hers, there was just shock all around because there was just such a superior and a stark difference in the quality of Reina's sound. As Yuuko said before, how is it possible for a first year to sound like that, to sound like a professional? And this contrast in the band members' reactions to both Kaori and Reina's auditions made clear that if the vote really was going to hinge on who is the objectively better player, Reina would win it in a heartbeat. Everyone is at least decently knowledgeable and practiced to distinguish a good sound from a better one. They are, after all, musicians, if high school musicians. Meanwhile, Taki is just chilling. You know, he knew that he had picked the right person the first time round. However, by having, you know, this second audition, he's effectively absolved himself from the false accusations of favoritism by tossing it back to the band to decide for themselves. So how did the vote go down? Only Yuuko and eventually Haruka clapped for Kaori, and then in Reina's corner, of course, there was Kumiko, and then Hazuki joined in. And because no one else clapped, Taki threw the decision over to Kaori, who in good conscience couldn't take the solo part for herself and gave it to Reina fair and square. And what I loved about how Kyoani orchestrated this sequence of the way that the vote played out was, like, on a surface level, seemingly only two outcomes were on the table. Outcome A, Kaori wins because she's more popular and presumably most people in the band would clap for her. That didn't happen, so you'd then assume outcome B would occur, which is that Reina wins it outright. But that's not what happens either. Instead, we get outcome C, where a tie takes place and Kaori gets to choose how this gets resolved. The key question arises then, what happened to the rest of the band? Like, why didn't anyone else other than those four clap? And it's obvious that everyone was blown away by Reina, but from the whispers that you could hear bouncing off the walls of the hall, it was clear that most people were grappling with an inner turmoil. What kind of turmoil? I mean, it was this... They couldn't clap for Kaori because she definitely wasn't as good as Reina. But if they clapped for Reina, they'd be responsible almost for dashing Kaori's last shot at a trumpet solo part, and they like her too much to do that to her. And so most people just sat on their hands, probably hedging their bets and just choosing the safer route of letting others choose and potentially taking the fall. This situation where the vast majority of people don't do anything and wait for others to resolve a complicated, like, group-wide or system-wide problem is kind of all too common in the real world. As to whether it's a good or bad thing is another huge conversation we could have another time, like the fact that most people just sit on the sidelines waiting for others to choose. But the main point here is that Kaori did great in terms of realistically reflecting the dynamics of a diverse group of people subject to the rules of social expectations and of self-regulation. I loved how during the vote clapping, both Kaori and Reina ended up with these completely satisfied smiles on their faces, knowing that there was at least one person, Yuuko and Kumiko respectively, who will stay by their side no matter what. And that's the takeaway from the audition for those two. Like, forget the politics surrounding it. Just know that you're loved by someone who wants to see you do your best and take your shot. For Kaori in particular, that or during that last flashback of her interaction with Yuuko, Kaori made it clear that she is well aware of where her abilities lie musically. She knows that she's not at a professional level, unlike Reina, but to her, that's not the point at all. Does she want to keep improving technically and win broad recognition for her skills by getting the chance to solo? Sure, like that is definitely a key driver for why musicians cry and bleed and sweat through so many hours of practice. But we also endure all of that because we just like music. For Kaori and for many musicians, recognition and public achievements are sort of the happy byproducts of a very long and tough journey towards proficiency. At the end of the day, however, and I love that this was the message that rang really true and clear by the end of this episode, that the most important thing is just the joy and the self-satisfaction that you get out of playing your music. Here's a good question from Brandon B. In hindsight, it's puzzling why Kaori would even aim for an open public audition as if she didn't know what the result would be. Why risk the public humiliation of an apparent loss? So my thoughts are... So the last episode established that Kaori knew Reina likely won the first audition fairly, but also she wasn't going to say no to having a second shot at her dream, regardless of the drama surrounding it and regardless of just how slim her chances were. Yuuko and most everyone else felt that Kaori had done her time and hence deserved the solo part over Reina. But for Kaori, though that was partly why she was so upset at the outcome of the first audition and knowing that this was her last year, her being able to redo her audition and openly challenge Reina for the spot was much more a case of, if she wasn't going to take her shot, when was she going to? This was it. This is like mom's spaghetti last shot type of thing. So remember Asuka pinpointing how it's herself that Kaori can't accept, that it was her failure more so than being beat by Reina that bothers her. So it's more of a personal thing and not really to do with Reina. So if miraculously you're just given a second shot at redoing that, at having another chance to see your dream come true, why wouldn't you take it? And by the end of episode 11, I think Kaori was finally able to accept the outcome wholeheartedly, because not only did she get to take her best swing at it by practicing her ass off, but she also came out of the whole ordeal a much more confident and competitive musician who could definitely hold her head high, having done everything she could to achieve her dream. I've come around to the merits of having a second open audition. The fact that so many people in the band were happy to entertain and spread the rumors about Taki favoring Reina meant that drastic measures conducted in an open manner were needed to quash all of the negative vibes that was flowing in the band. So Taki's purpose of an open audition was to make it so that people couldn't justifiably raise any further objections to decisions concerning solo parts. DTTM sent in an interesting observation that I think reveals quite a bit and that I hadn't actually noticed. So they wrote, Taki asked Kaori, will you play the solo part? But when it's Reina's turn, he said, you will play the solo part. It's not a question anymore, but a statement. Yeah, spot on. In the seconds right after Taki asked Kaori that question, you see the shock ripple through the band. And Reina, she looks resigned, like she's preparing herself to be disappointed. However, Taki again is very calm about it, and I suspect he knew Kaori well enough to anticipate that she'd make the right choice and not take the solo. She's just simply too honest and considerate and mature to do otherwise. When answering Taki, Kaori used a particular sequence of words too that I thought was significant. She won't take the solo part and she can't take it, meaning it's not really a choice for her in the end. You know, accepting the solo part under these circumstances would have reflected badly on her and would have gone against her entire moral character. It would mean blatantly taking advantage of her popularity instead of standing on her own merits as a trumpet player. Plus, it would mean selfishly not giving the band their best chance at winning actual gold. In fact, I think counting on Kaori's moral fiber and her moral compass was what underpinned Taki's entire strategy of putting the ball in Kaori's court. Had Taki just straight up given the solo part to Reina without having thrown it to Kaori first, the band probably still wouldn't have fully accepted the decision. It had to come from Kaori, the one person everyone was most concerned about, but also looked to for moral leadership. The final point I want to make is that the expressions on each character's face after it is confirmed that Reina will be the soloist were intriguing, to say the least, and they made me wonder if the drama over this whole situation is really going to be over. Obviously Yuuko was devastated for Kaori, and like here we can just spare a moment of sympathy for her. And I want to read a comment from Hofatel, who said, you really have to feel for Yuuko. She devoted more than a year supporting Kaori, the person who gave her a reason to keep on staying with the band, and now Kaori's dream of playing the solo comes to an end with her resignation to Reina. But I'd like to think that Yuuko's feelings are not just despair. She must have also felt so proud that the sweet and ever-considerate Kaori focused on herself for once and gave it her all. That's what makes it even more painful. It hurts more because she tried so hard. Yeah, unfortunately, that's just the dilemma, isn't it? It's like, if you don't try hard, then the victory isn't as sweet. But also if you lose, the pain's not so great. But if you do try your best, whatever victory you do get is so much sweeter, but also any loss you take is that much more painful. But yeah, I know we've talked about how Kaori would have much preferred the second option, doing her best. Also, because of the reasons that Hofatel outlined, that despite the disappointment, Yuuko can rest easy knowing that Kaori was able to give it her all. I think Yuuko will eventually get over it, especially if she sees that Kaori is at peace with her last attempt. It's the others I'm a bit uncertain about. So, of course, Kumiko was elated, and Hazuki and Midori are also happy for Reina, but Haruka and Asuka seemed somewhat more reserved about the final outcome. If I had to guess, Haruka is now worried about whether Kaori is really going to be okay with losing the solo part to a first year, a solo part that should have been hers under normal circumstances. She's also probably concerned over what I would be concerned about in her position as the lone president, because Asuka won't lift a finger to help. And that concern is like whether the rest of the band is going to be as accepting of the result as Kaori herself is, even though it was Kaori who, you know, decided to give the solo part to Reina. There's this fear still, like, are they going to turn on Reina after this and say, well, Kaori did everything right plus some and handed the solo part back to you? Don't you think you should have responded to her overwhelming kindness in turn by offering the solo part back to her? You know, it is her last year after all. Meanwhile, Asuka's made it clear she's not going to help whatever drama turns up next for the band. So what's going through her mind? I mean, who knows? Like, she would be cognizant of how Kaori would be feeling and can probably anticipate everything Haruka's anticipating and worrying about. But as always, Asuka's just going to do Asuka. She's always going to take the more passive or practical standpoint of, well, regardless of how people take this, all I care about is moving on past all this unnecessary drama. Okay, some part of me can't actually believe this is happening, but we are actually moving on to episode 12 of Hibike. So if you guys are ready to sync this, let's do it in 3, 2, 1, play. Yuuko. I like that he emphasized that it wasn't going to be Kaori. I didn't realize that either. Just a note of finality in his tone. Okay, well, it has been way too long since we heard this OP. I think I said this in maybe the first episode, but I really love that they do their names using the musical symbols. Sort of kind of messed up musical symbols, but yeah, it's really cool. Aoi. I wonder who in history decided that rain is like the universal symbol for just depression. Yeah. I do love the drum part and that. You know, xylophones. Let's bring it in the youths for backup. I mean, there is only one Midori. Wait, what just happened? Of course, she's already got it down perfectly. Asuka. She's just like shoulder brush. There's got to be cracks in her perfection, though, in Asuka's facade of perfection. Yeah, it's not quite as well articulated. Even Hazuki's like, It's interesting that when they do their own solo practices, Kumiko chooses this corner, like on the ground, and then Reina's like up the top on the rooftop. I don't know, maybe some interesting symbolism there. It's like Kumiko chooses this dark corner where no one will walk across, but Reina will practice out in the open at the roof. Oh, but she's here now. Does she mean to give her pressure by standing next to her like that? Oh. Just, you need that honesty. That smile, she's definitely smiling more these days, Reina. Also, this school is super tolerant because, I mean, had we like practiced out in the open, would is her mouth bleeding? Can that actually happen, brass players? My goodness. Ooh, that's nasty. But yeah, I was just gonna say before that, like, had we practiced out in the open like that and just annoyed everyone with our practice, like the rest of the school, we would have been totally had our asses kicked. Yes, exactly. Reaching for the moon, it's like Tsuki. The moon, of course, is like just symbolic for love. Interesting. Oh my god. Isn't it fascinating that she can't remember a time before she was consumed by this desire to be like Reina? I mean, poor Shuchi, still practicing the same part. That's cute. Oh, we finally get Aoi back. Okay, it seems genuine, but who knows? That was an interesting phrasing. Like, she didn't have a reason to continue instead of That's just much more passive reason for quitting. Like, not having a reason to continue. Because, like, not having a reason to continue is different from having a reason to quit. But it's fine to disturb the rest of the school. That sounds so good. Da, da. Shuichi just sweating. Oh no, is he gonna start picking off like the individuals that aren't pulling their weight? Yep. I'm surprised that he actually just put his hand up right away. Yeah, something's not quite right. Oh no. It's still those couple of notes. Those fast ones that she's stumbling over. Damn, she's gonna be bleeding a lot until the performance. She's doing that thing where, so if you have a very fast passage to play, you start from a really slow tempo and then build up until you can play to that required speed. It's just such a long and arduous process. I like how she's just there. I also love her voice. Like, it's very chill, actually, Reina. It swings between chill and like super rage. So no in between. Reina, again, like Asuka, just perfect already. That smile, she's like, yep, she's getting better. She better get better, I'll kick her ass. Kaori's like, oh, tell me about Asuka. The first audition, right? Oh. Natsuki just always around at the right moments when Yuuko's like getting embarrassed. Man, just such a world of difference between what she is like now, just going so hard with her practice, and at the beginning, when she's just lying around. Kakoi. Ooh, fresher man. It's like one thing to play it once perfectly, but to play it 10 times in a row perfectly is like another ask. Hmm. Oh. Oh man, that was brutal. Yeah, just move on. That's butterfly stuck in a spider web. More heavy symbolism. It's kind of like Kumiko's has bloomed or grown into the butterfly, beautiful butterfly, because she's like actually trying now, but she still can't get past this barrier of like this really hard piece or passage. The bun of the moon. I just am reminded that everything that Keone puts into the scene means something. I feel really bad for her. I wonder if she'll kick up a big fuss about it though. Like if it was the old her, she definitely wouldn't say anything. Oh boy. Just always on the opposite sides of the road or the river. Oh no. Wait, that's the piece that was playing in a previous competition. She's become Reina. She gets it now. Oh my god. Oh man. Incoming life advice from Big Sister. Kumiko is just running her mouth. Wow, she's totally overpowered her sister. Maybe her sister's kind of impressed as well. I think that's what Aoi lacked. It's just this passion for her instrument, for the sax. I mean, she forgot her pride at school. Isn't what he's saying like sometimes you don't end up doing the thing that you actually want to do? It's just a choice you have to make to do something else because of circumstances. But she took it the other way. Is he giving her a second shot? Ooh, maybe he was just giving her a kick in the bum by making Asuka play it by herself, just to send her Kumiko a message. So many messages from Reina. Well, she's apologizing for failing just once. Is that gonna trigger Reina? Okay. Good. Okay, I think the next episode is the season finale. It is so fascinating that we've sort of come full circle now. From Kumiko, like that very first scene where Kumiko turns to Reina and is like, what's your problem? Like, why are you so upset? To now Kumiko herself, because of seeing how Reina conducts herself and the attitude and the full-blown passion that Reina brings to her trumpet playing, she's been inspired to be the same. And now she's pretty much put herself in Reina's shoes and totally gets why losing, even after having poured all of your blood, sweat, and tears, blood literally, into something, and losing, like that feeling is just horrible. Finally, she gets it. Also, I feel like Reina has kind of learned something from Kumiko as well. It's sort of like they've meshed together and then they've taken away things from each other so that they are now each much more balanced people. Like Reina's definitely a little bit more less like tense and more like forgiving on herself and others. So that's really interesting. Straight on to episode 13. I think Kumiko's gonna smash it. She has to. So if you guys are ready to go, let's do this in 3, 2, 1, play. Five in the morning. Also, isn't this full circle, like having the alarm wake her up, but she's already up before the alarm, as opposed to episode 1? Oh man. This is just, everything she's doing is completely opposite to what she did in the first episode. I think she hiked up her skirt in the first episode, but now she's lowering her skirt. Why are they so cute? So comfortable with each other now. Is this actually, are we gonna see the competition? Oh, so it's like 10 days past now. Oh boy, pre-competition nerves. Who's Knuckle Senpai? Really? Knuckle Senpai? It's just very chill, that guy. I love how the students who aren't actually playing in the competition also, you know, are involved. The logistics of band are just insane. Hazuki, what are you thinking? She's probably concocting some other strategy to get Kumiko and Shuichi together. Who's that? His daughter? Same as always. A lot of deja vu in this episode. Sub members. Sweet. That Natsuki blushing. What? Love through harassment. Excellent concept, I guess. For Natsuki, it's okay. Matching designs. I mean, okay, Hazuki is definitely a Kumirei shipper. For sure. I love that they're getting recognition, the sub members. Go, Haruka! Asuka's just being an asshole. It does put the rest of the band at ease, though, her humor. That's like a plus side. See, Asuka can be a supportive friend if she wants to. So it does seem like the band has moved on from all of that drama previously. There was that one split second that Asuka just kind of looked down and looked a little bit contemplative. Don't know what she was thinking there. Fear of failure, yeah. That is such a barrier to doing the best that you know you can. Interesting that that came from Midori. Yeah, I guess a lot can go missing in between transport. Hey, we get the blue demons. The two people who helped Kumiko sort of like come out of her shell and really go for her music and not hold back and hide her talent. I wonder if Taki's nervous. Probably not. It looks like he's seen some shit. This is probably just like nothing to him. Man, I remember these rooms that you have to hustle into, like just before you go up on stage for your competition. A lot of nerves. The water. That was a great shot. Are we back to how we used to be, as in before all the drama happened? Yeah, don't you feel like Kumiko has become more like Reina in terms of like her drive to succeed, but then Reina has just come down a notch and become more like Kumiko in terms of not taking things so seriously all the time? Yuuko. I wonder if they're following the Dika. Why the whispering into the ear? Shushi. Okay. Probably deserve that. You meant well. Hmm. I don't think he even saw that. Just got shivers. So everything she says seems to carry this heavier weight behind it. Like, I don't know, something's happening to her in her personal life and she's not letting anyone in on it. It kind of feels like this is her last performance. Natsuki just probably more nervous than anyone else on that stage. goto. Hmm. There we go. There's that keeping your expectations low so that you can never be disappointed. Yeah. Yeah. Nice percussion. That was great, right? Here we go. Whoa, those trumpets were just like. Straw all over their music. Boom, boom. I gotta say, percussion's just killing it. She wish she got that part. That look between Asuka and Kumiko, that was great. Oh, there's that message that Natsuki left. The very first message on Kumiko's page. So cute. Ooh, that animation of the with the tambourine was really good. Da-da-da-da. That was a great run. What's she thinking? Is she feeling a bit threatened? Does she know that Kitaoji's better? Yes, that's all. Nice. Oof, that was smooth. Interesting that they broke the phrase there. It's a bass clarinet, sounds nice. Oh, Kaori. Just being like, yeah, it was the right choice, I guess. That octave, like da da, was very nice. Why the focus on Kumiko's friend from Rika? Is she regretting going to Rika now? Nice. I don't know. Asuka, it's giving me like weird vibes. Epic, epic finish. That was great. It's like running a marathon. Man, they sounded great. And just, Kumiko are just basking in the applause for the first time ever, probably. Actually caring about a performance. Full circle. I know they're gonna make it through, but it's still quite nerve-wracking. Okay, that's good, right? Gold. Was that real gold? Do they know that? I guess I don't know until their names get read out. This... Asuka, why? Why so sad? No, I do not like where Asuka's story is going. Da, 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 da. There's that minor transition that we talked about in the first episode. But now that everyone's happy. Oh, I love this show. Oh, what's this full performance of? Oh, it's the band version of the ending song. Cool. Nice. It's so satisfying seeing how far the band have come since episode 1, especially, and of course the biggest change that we see has been in Kumiko. I loved that in this last episode they called back to a lot of the things that we saw in episode 1, except just put a little twist on it to show us emotionally how much she's grown. Essentially she's become another Reina, or it's not quite accurate, like she is now on the same level as Reina in terms of how much she wants to succeed and do her best and take her music seriously. It was great, that little monologue that we had with Kumiko during the performance. Oh, that's cute. What is this? That's cool. Yeah, that little monologue that we had where she recognized that if you don't try for the sake of protecting yourself, actually I want to go back to that portrait. Yeah, if you don't try or you lower your expectations so that you don't get hurt, you never actually achieve what you say you want to achieve. You know, you really have to put yourself out there in order to really get what you want. Otherwise it's just all empty talk and you never actually get anywhere. Wait, let me see. The other thing that really worried me watching this is like they're definitely dropping hints that something is going on with Asuka. And this almost, I mean, the episode is called like what, Final Goodbye Competition or something. It definitely feels like on a more personal level this potentially might have been Asuka's last performance and she's not going all the way with them to nationals, which is weird. But she looks perfectly happy in this photo, like next to Haruka and Kaori. Also, is that like Shuichi with his arm around Taki sensei? I think so. That's really cute. Hey guys, just a really quick sum up this time because I do have to run, but overall I am so glad that we are back with Hibike. It just seeing all of the little details and the animation of the instruments and the, as I said right at the start, just the incredible attention to detail that Kyoani gives in animating facial expressions and stuff, such that you're like, wait, you almost, if you don't pay like 100% attention, you can miss these little micro expressions that the characters make, and you kind of don't pick up on things that could be foreshadowing what's going to happen next. One of those things, of course, was like Asuka, which I already ranted about before. There is definitely, I feel like, going to be a much bigger focus on her in the next season, because it just seems like she's going through something in her own personal life, which I'm very happy about. I mean, not that I'm happy that she's going through something, but I would be really curious to see what a focus on Asuka would reveal about her personal life, and I guess what makes her tick, really. The other thing is Taki sensei. So we kind of saw, like, to this point, he's always maintained a very stoic expression. The only time that he really was a little bit flustered was during the whole drama with the rumors being spread about him and Reina. But other than that, like, even under this sort of intense pressure, I guess, of a competition, he's still very much like, just do your best. We've practiced enough and everything will be fine. He was looking at this photo of his before heading out to the competition, and just briefly caught a glimpse of, like, I think it was a young girl, not sure who that is, but obviously also holds some kind of deeper meaning. Perhaps someone who is very close and dear to him and influenced him to take the path that he did, to follow in his father's footsteps as a band instructor. It was interesting, like, during his conversation with Kumiko that he had, that he was revealing a little bit more about his life story and how he ended up at Kataoji, and that it wasn't really his first choice to be a band instructor like his dad was, and to go to Kataoji. So I wonder if that wasn't his initial choice, what did he want to do, and what sort of changed the trajectory of his career. Finally, of course, like, one of the biggest focuses of these last two episodes, with doing the whole full circle from episode 1 to episode 13, was the leaps and bounds that we see that Kumiko has made in her character and her passion for music, and her desire to be more like Reina in terms of wanting to stand out and wanting to develop her skills and talents such that she is special. Just cast your mind back to episode 1, Kumiko, who, Kumiko's withdrawn from herself because of the trauma that she suffered with the whole senpai incident. Kumiko's exhausted at having to carry around that guilt. But now that she's been freed from that guilt due to seeing how Reina deals with all the hate and all jealousy or whatever that gets thrown her way just because she stands out, she is now to the point where she realizes that she doesn't have to restrain herself anymore, and that she can let herself go to really pursue what she really wants, which is to be good at what she does, which is to play the euphonium. And why? She doesn't really need any reason other than because she likes playing the euphonium. And we kind of saw that with her interaction with her sister, and also Aoi as well, the two people in her life who as far as she knows, gave up their passion for music or their instruments in order to pursue other things. And I think her seeing both her sister and Aoi, not really being happy, really, or satisfied about their chosen pathways. It's more sort of like an acceptance that music wasn't ever going to be a long-term thing for them. That really lit a fire underneath Kumiko, and she was like, I don't want to be like that. I want to be like Reina, who is just unapologetically and full steam ahead going for this dream of hers to keep playing her instrument and to keep developing her musical skills. You know, whatever it is that the future holds in this moment, that's what I want to be focusing on 100%. So yeah, definitely looking forward to how Kumiko keeps growing after this season, because she has already, you know, come a long way. And it will be interesting, I think, to see if the focus shifts from Kumiko to other members of the band whom we haven't really spent that much time with, or if it'll just introduce new barriers or new challenges for Kumiko and Reina to have to overcome, whether together or separately. Still not sure about that, because again, it seems to be something brewing between Shuichi and Kumiko, but I don't know even if that's going to be a focus. Like, if anything is clear, I think Hibike is will probably most likely not be a romance focused show, and much more on the personal growth of each of the band members. Next reaction is the OVA, I believe, and I don't remember who suggested it, but someone did mention that it's probably time that we do a Hogwarts house sorting for each of the characters or main characters in Hibike, which will be interesting and hopefully won't take us 10 hours, but who knows given how long it took me to go through the K-On! Girls. So yeah, look forward to that. Thank you guys for sticking around, and I hope you guys really have been living your best lives, and look forward to more Hibike. We are definitely moving on to season 2 of Hibike. I have been asked if I'm dropping this. No, I'm not. I love the show too much. So yeah, until next reaction, guys, take care, and I will see you next time.